Yo, what is going on, my dudes? Welcome to another RuneScape news coverage video. For this video, we're going to be talking about something else that was showed off in the game jam, and that is unstable skilling resource dungeons. So without any further ado, let's jump right into the video. Let's go. Alright guys, so this is actually worked on by mods Iago and Edge, and this is something that will help break up the monotony of skilling and actually be pretty lucrative in terms of either XP or resources. The choice is really up to you. So what will happen with this update is, as you're skilling in any way, shape, or form, you have a chance of receiving a new unstable skilling resource dungeon map. Now, you can only get this while skilling, you cannot get this from combat. So as it sounds, it actually works pretty similar to the Uncharted Island maps from the Ark region. However, when you get these, you'll be able to click on them and it'll give you a locator, much like you get from Elite Clue Scrolls, where it'll point you in the direction of this new unstable dungeon. Having a quick right click on the map itself will allow you to change the different modes, and that corresponds with how you're going to interact with the dungeon. There are two modes, as I've talked about before. You can choose whether or not you want an increased XP rate from skilling in this new dungeon, or increased resources. So you can choose the XP route or the GP route if you choose so. It's important to keep in mind that wearing a Luck of Dwarves while you skill will increase the chance of getting one of these maps. Now, you can have multiple maps. There is a cap though, however, and it does work similar to effigies in the sense that if you have one in your inventory or bank, it gets progressively rarer to get another until the cap is reached. I don't know if that means, like effigies, there's a cap of 5 of these. They did not specify that, but just know that that's how it works. If you want the best chance of getting these, you want to be using them as soon as you get them. Now in there's going to be skills for you to train on, as you would imagine. These are aimed at level 40 and up. The resources will scale with your player's level, so keep that in mind. They are pretty rare, the maps themselves, to come across them while they're skilling, but that is because these are going to be extremely lucrative. Now, when you're in these unstable skilling resource dungeons, you are only allowed to skill in it for a certain amount of time until you're booted out. So you need to plan out a strategy beforehand. You can right click on the dungeon once you find it in the overall game world, and it'll give you an idea of what kind of skilling nodes are in that dungeon. So then you can plan, do I want XP or do I want these resources, depending on what it ends up showing you. Now, once you enter it, after you've made your decision, you have a timer. You can see on here, it is 3 minutes for this video. I don't know if that is going to be final. That may be tweaked and you may have more time to skill in here, but that is, what they're showing off at this stage of the update. Very similar to like the Premier Club Vault, if you're familiar with that, where you got a certain amount of time where you can collect the chests for the rewards in the vault and then you're booted. Very similar mechanic that we're seeing with this update. Now, with these resource dungeons, there are only gathering skills, and that's probably what they're going to end up going with. They're going to keep it as gathering skills, so just keep that in mind. And as I said, the two modes, there's the GP mode, which will gather you a lot more resources than normal, and XP mode, where you get a lot more XP than normal. Now, there are existing resources here that we have elsewhere in the game worlds, but the rate at which you can collect from these is far greater than you can outside. For example, they got elder trees. You're not going to be chopping elder logs at the same rate you would in the surface world. These are far faster. So not only if you choose the XP route or the GP route, you're getting way more than you would outside of these dungeons, which makes sense considering you only have a tiny amount of time in here in the first place. Realistically, it wouldn't be all that lucrative if it gave you the same rates in the surface world for some of these resources. One cool thing, all your signs of the porters will work here, although there is going to be deposit boxes for your bank, so you can deposit them there, scattered around within these dungeons, but it's also good to know that you can bring your porters, which is honestly the ideal route. You have a very small amount of time in here. You do not want to waste any seconds running to those deposit boxes, so it's good that they added porter functionality. Also, the abilities Surge and Bladed Dive will work perfectly fine in here, so if you're somebody who's extremely efficient and you want to hop from node to node with as little amount of time as possible, at least you have Surge and Bladed Dive at your disposal. They also have, if you see here, a treasure chest in the center. Now these are special spots. It may not necessarily end up being treasure chests, I don't know at this point, and they don't even know exactly what they want to do yet with it. I'm sure they're taking suggestions if you have any ideas, but there are going to be some special spots that don't exactly follow the status quo and will be extremely lucrative in some form or fashion. And we're going to have to wait and see how that exactly pans out. Now, the generation of these resources is going to be completely random. You're not necessarily always going to get what you want. That's just the nature of something being random. And there is a slim chance that you might get a small amount of resources, but there should be enough in there to where you're able to constantly collect from the different nodes while the timer still runs. So you shouldn't have fully depleted the dungeon and then there's like 2 minutes remaining. That should not be the case, but just know that some may have a lot more on offer than others, just due to the nature of it being a randomized system. But they are putting in some fail safes so that worst case scenario, if you're extremely unlucky, you'll be able to skill for at least 80% of the allotted time. Also, in terms of the visual appearance, it will be randomized as well. You see here, it does have a very like Brimhaven dungeon-esque look to it. That's not going to be the only look. They said they're going to look for at least up to 8 different styles. You may see like a lava dungeon one or like an ice one, whatever the case may be. So there's going to be, like I said, up to 8 different visual styles just to break up the monotony of it looking so samey. Doesn't actually really change anything. It doesn't have any influence on the resources that will be showing in these dungeons, just a visual aesthetic. Not only that, your spawn point within the dungeon may also be randomized, so you might end up right next to the exact node that you want, or the exact one you want may be on the very opposite end of the dungeon and you'd have to traverse to the back end and collect your resources there. So a lot of randomness going on with these. It's really going to shape it to a new experience every time you enter one of these unstable skilling resource dungeons. So that is actually cool, just to keep it fresh and exciting. One of the things that is not necessarily straightforward that you're seeing on here is the herbs. There is a herb location, and as you see here, it's just herbs as opposed to, for example, the elder logs or the mining rocks or the wisps. You can tell immediately exactly what you're going to get. If you look at an elder tree, you know you're going to get elder logs. If you look at a rune rock, you know you're going to be getting rune ore, etc., etc. For the herbs, however, they are going to be randomized. So it's going to be basically a ZMI for collecting herbs. Bear in mind, this is based on your level, so if you have a higher level, you should expect much higher level herbs. So it's going to be lucrative no matter what level band you're at. One thing that they have not made yet in this current build is agility shortcuts. They're thinking about adding those, so if you just so happen to get so unlucky that you spawn on the opposite end of a resource that you need, there might be an agility shortcut that'll take you straight to it. So that will actually be pretty cool to help mitigate the randomness if you happen to end up where you don't want to be. One thing they do not have on here is Hunter, and that will eventually come into this when it does launch, but they are working out how exactly they want to put it, because standard Hunter is not exactly the route they want to take. They just don't know how they want to incorporate it yet, but just know that Hunter in some way will be featured here in these dungeons. Also, just know that resources in here are not infinite. They can deplete and you'll have to move on to the next one. I mean, I kind of hinted at that when I talked about the fact that you didn't want to run out of resources and then still have timer left on your resource dungeon with nothing to do. But yeah, just to reiterate, resources can deplete. And if you happen to leave your dungeon, you cannot re-enter. So do not leave until you are ready to leave. You are forfeiting your dungeon if you do it early. And the final thing, which is probably one of the most exciting so far, is these resource dungeons, you can bring a friend with you to skill with you. Now, you will be competing with resources, obviously, so just go forward with that in mind. Make sure you're bringing somebody who's not necessarily going to compete with you, and you guys can both benefit from the dungeon without hindering each other. But it is actually really cool that they have that feature that you will be able to have more people with you. It's not just a solo thing. So yeah, let me know what you guys think about it. Do you like these unstable skilling resource dungeons? I think it's a really good idea. It really does, like I said early on in the video, break up the monotony of skilling and is also extremely lucrative, so it's worth your time to go and get these, whether you're somebody who's after XP or if you want to get a nice chunk of quick cash. I don't know, I'm looking forward to this. and if I hear more, I'll definitely let you guys know here on the channel. That pretty much wraps it up for this video though, guys. If you enjoyed it, hit that like button. If you are not subscribed yet and you want to stay up to date on all things RuneScape related, then hit that subscribe button. Anyways, I appreciate you watching. I am out. Peace.